Hello, thank you for watching Tea with Mr. B. With me, Mr. B. Tea with Mr. B is my opportunity to chat with people that I think are pretty impressive. Whether they are unique, experiencing a second chance, or making a difference, I want to know how they do what they do, what motivates them, what their challenges are, and what their future ideas are. Yes, I'm a bit of a nosy bugger. Now, there are some pretty impressive people in our world, but seldom do we get to hear about them or their beauty, their love, their humanity, and their greatness, because sometimes negativity and tragedy just gets in the way. Talking about pretty impressive people, I hope you enjoyed today's chat, and thank you for watching. Today's guest is a very well-respected, long-serving custodian, a fitness fanatic, a player of the wrong type of football, and a coffee addict. Oh, and he's got a date with the Queen coming up. It's my pleasure to welcome Mel Thomas.
Mel, welcome. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. What's the time difference like there?
So I am nearly 10 past 10 in the morning over here.
Yeah, it's just after 4 o'clock here, and it's muggy.
Good old British weather, eh? It looks
That's
fantastic. Looks fantastic though, the backdrop that you've got here. I'm sat on the floor against my wall to try and make it look as professional as I can be.
Yeah,
So,
I'm sat in my lounge. I live in heaven at the moment. It's a lovely place just outside of Ashby de la Zouch, and yeah, it's beautiful. We're living the dream.
Love it. I love it. Okay, well, look, thank you for joining me today. I'll do a quick cheers. I know you've got one of these. If you could just show that to the camera.
Thanks
Brilliant.
for my cup.
Thank you very much. Cheers to you.
Cheers.
So I'm going to start off aptly with how we met, and this might jog your memory a little bit. So in May 2007, we met for the Matt Hampson Bowl, and you're displaying that fantastic jersey there. Thank you for that. Number 89, awesome. And that was an exhibition game where between a reunited Leicester Panthers against the Loughborough Aces, which I think were a collegiate champions team. So you were part of a 60-man squad that reunited for 6 months.
Yes, we did. Yeah.
To prepare for the game, to raise money for Matt Hampson. So that was over 14 years ago.
Absolutely. Where has that time gone? It's absolutely amazing. I look back on it quite fondly, really, because we raised nearly £50,000 doing that, and that is some going. You know, we all came back together. Some bodies were older than others. You know, some people hadn't put kit on from the last time we put kit on in 1996, and it was one of those where you just felt duty bound to do something, and everybody contributed in their own way. My contribution was by way of fitness, because I was and I still am a physical training instructor. So I did the PT for the team, getting everyone into condition. We had brilliant support from David Lloyd's leisure clubs. They allowed us to use the clubs to get the players fit. Gave them free passes for the period of the leading up to the game, you know, and doing one-to-one stuff with the players as well. You know, and it actually was a bit of a springboard for some of the players, because ever since then, a lot of the players have actually stayed fit and carried on training.
Brilliant.
So it was a great cause. It was a brilliant event. It was well attended. You know, and it's one of those things I really do look back fondly with. And as you've said, I've still got the shirt, and I've still got my helmet, which was signed by no other than Martin Johnson. So yeah, it is a keepsake. It hangs up in my gym. You know, and I fondly look at it with great memories.
Awesome. Okay, and I've got this photo here that I'm putting on the screen here. There's some kind of stud that we're looking at there. I believe it's you. Not really changed much in 14 years, in my opinion. I had a great time being involved with that as well. It was quite an honour indeed. But what's really funny for me is that you met my mum before we met, and you met in the 90s. And that was as an American football player. And I'm going to bring the image up here. And I remember this photo, but I just remember your feet.
Yeah, it was a charity thing that Shoal were doing at the time.
Yeah,
they were doing feet, and it was brilliant. And you know, she did my feet for me, and I still have to do my feet now because I'm on my feet so much. Doing instructor, and do a lot of hip training and running and stuff like that. They just literally take a real pounding. So I get lots of sort of hard build-up of skin and stuff like that. So I really do have to look after my feet, because even though I'm in that privileged position where I'm retired, I don't have to work, I still enjoy going out, doing my fitness classes and stuff like that. And they're my trade, really. They're tools of my trade, my feet. So I really do have to look after them. So yeah, she really sort of gave me a really good insight into what to do with them, how to look after them, you know, and keep them in good nick.
Brilliant. I love it. So I'm really intrigued to learn about your career as a police officer. So I've done my little bit of research, and I'm going to read my notes here. So I read that you are the first Black African Caribbean officer in Leicestershire to become an authorised firearms officer. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was right. It's one of those things where black people don't associate themselves with guns. You know, it's in Caribbean islands. So you were scared of guns. I was really scared of even air pistols and stuff like that. So at the time when I joined the force, there was only one black authorised firearms officer, which was Trevor Davids, and he originated from South Africa. So when I went for my firearms assessment, it was an unknown, really. You know, I scored awfully on the assessment. I think I hit the stick that the actual target was on. But for some reason, the firearms instructor saw something in me and thought, you know what, you'd make a good authorised firearms officer. And I think that was because I was raw. I had no idea of a gun. Whereas the people that came in from the forces, a lot of them had the opinion of, oh, I've shot weapons in the forces, there's nothing you can teach me. Whereas I was that sponge of, the more you taught me, the more I'd learn. So I went into the actual course, I failed every shoot, and I only passed on the last day of the actual course to stay on the course. The pass mark was 40, I scored 46. And then after that, I never failed another shoot. So it's just
brilliant.
Something clicked. Something went right. I was a firearms officer for 6.5 years. And I only really came off because I wanted to be a PTI and the opportunity arose. So it was one of those things where I just thought, you know what, let's do it. I've done it for 6.5 years. Let's go and be a PTI. And that was always my dream, to be a PT within the police service. So, and that's why I left. So yeah, it is how can I say, it is an honour to be the first Black African Caribbean authorised firearms officer. It comes with responsibility, because once I'd done it, a lot of other people followed me into it as well. And you kind of see yourself as a trailblazer, because it encourages people to do stuff and actually see that they can see themselves. And that's what it's about for me, being a police officer. I want people, and I wanted people to see themselves in the organisation, to feel that they could come into the organisation, feel comfortable, and make a difference.
In that article that I read, it continues, and this is another note that I've got here. So he paved the way for policing nationally through his experience, one of which was when he entered a house whilst the suspect was armed inside with a gun. This was the first time in the country officers used tactics to do this, and paved the way for others in forming future tactical operations. Wow.
Yeah.
The article also references some of your other achievements, including research and development of alternatives to CS spray, design and production of spit guards, which are extremely important during the pandemic, of course, a leader in officer safety and public order policing, and a trusted role model and ambassador for communities. I feel a bit inadequate, really. And it references your passion for safeguarding young people and tackling knife crime, in addition to continuing to work with disadvantaged students from schools, acting as a role model to transfer their thinking about life choices and influence career plans. I'm not finished yet. All of this, in addition to being a respected champion and an ambassador for numerous charities for over 3 decades, raising over £350,000, and all of this earned you a trip to meet the Queen. This is just unreal. Did I get all of that correct?
Yes, you did. Yeah.
So when I read all of this, I felt, well, obviously very inadequate, but very proud to know you, of course, but really uplifted and motivated to want to do good in the world. So thank you for that, and thank you for everything that you've done and that you do and that you're going to continue to do in the future. I'm not entirely sure if it's all true. I need to fact check it. But meeting the Queen, then, I understand that that was a very proud and emotional experience for you and your family. So tell us why you got to meet the Queen and tell us what that experience was like.
Well, I've got to go and see the Queen to collect my medal. So I was awarded a QPM in the birthdays honours list. Obviously, because of COVID, all the visits and presentations were on hold. So now everything's getting back to normal. As you may have read this week, all the ceremonies are now getting back to normal. So Trooping the Guards now back at the Palace again. So everything will start opening up again. So I'll wait for my invite from the Cabinet Office to go and collect my QPM. We were at Buckingham Palace in 2002 for the Commonwealth Games. So I was one of the security escorts for the Commonwealth Games, and the baton gets handed to the Queen, and then the Queen puts her message in it, and then she hands it over to the first athlete, and then they take it off. So that was I was guarding it with a number of officers, with myself, Sally Gunnell, Austin Healy, who you'd probably remember, and Steve Redgrave. So it was walked out of the palace, and different celebrities basically handled it, and off it went on its trip around the world. So so I've still got to go and meet the Queen. I'm really looking forward to it. My mum will be coming with me, and my partner. It will be a really emotional event because obviously, my dad's not here anymore, and he was always sort of my biggest fan, and of everything that I did. But yeah, it is an honour. Again, it goes back to that trailblazing of using your opportunity to do something good. I'm in a position where I could do that, trying to educate, support and influence young individuals into going down the right path, because we know how easy it is for people to go down the wrong path. We know how easy it is, one mistake, and whilst life's not over, it's life-changing. Whether they've been injured and it's life-changing, or they actually commit offences and it's life-changing. It's only last week there's a young lad who desperately wants to join the police, but because of convictions he can't join, and he's desperately upset. But there's nothing I can do about that. The old saying, and it really does ring true. Your future will not dictate your past, but your past will dictate your future. And it really is. I can't tell kids that much. I can't emphasize it enough that they've got to make the right choices now. So, going back to what you were saying, working in the schools, working with the schools, doing these career fairs now as a positive action officer, trying to educate kids and explain to them that they've got to make those choices now, because I had a lot of time at school. I messed around. I was silly. I had to make up 5 years of schooling in 2 years, and it's only for a really, really good teacher, Jack D, who basically saved me, that I sit here now with everything I have around me and the career that I've got. And it was highlighted in a recent book that was written in relation to my experiences and other people's experiences. It's all about making the right choices, and it's all about people having those role models that they can look up to, have that contact with, to ask those questions when they feel they're going down the wrong path. You know, am I making the right choice? Well, no. But not just know why you're not making the right choice, and then explain to them what the right choices are and what that looks like. So it has been rewarding. You know, you've asked the question, is it all true on that list? Yes, it is. You know, you know, the being the first team to go into a live, as we call it, a live fire situation where you've got a report at the local, as you'll know, the local Royal Infirmary in Leicester, that someone's been shot, and then you've got someone on the phone saying that they've been shot. So now you know it's 2 people that have been shot, and you've still got a person armed in a building. You know, you then have to make that decision. Do you go in, which we never ever did as police officers? We always put what was called containment on, and then we negotiate a surrender for the people to come out, or it was a case of going in to save life and limb. And we all looked at each other at the time and we said, this is what we're trained for. And we put the door in, the person had shot themselves, and we went through, we did a systematic search through the building, and we found the other person who he'd shot, which was his partner, his ex-partner. We tried to administer first aid, but unfortunately she died. And it paved the way for other firearms operations, because it's just something that was never done. It was not like on the TV where you get the police officers lying stacked up on the door, kicking the door in, all going and everything else. That was done hours after. That was done when, as I was a tactical firearms unit officer, you all came in, we all briefed up, it was decided what would happen, we all moved in onto the building, but that was hours after. You know, this was, the shooting had happened 4 minutes from Anstey, from Leicester City Centre to Anstey, getting out of the vehicle, kitting up, and then going straight to the house and putting the door in. So I think we counted, I think it took us 24 minutes from the initial call at the clock tower to actually going in and getting hands on. And I don't think that was too bad, really.
Yeah, not half.
You know, it's one of those where you think, you do think of what could have happened, but that's what we signed up to do with cops. That's what we do. And that's what cops out there are doing every day. Every day of the week, they're stopping, preventing stuff like this happening. And, you know, when people decide and come out with comments of defund the police and comments of, you know, how bad the police are, just remember that a police officer gets assaulted in Leicestershire every day, 1 a day, every day, on average, sometimes 2, 3 a day.
Got you. Yeah. Wow, that is a fantastic insight into what you've experienced and what goes on to be experienced by your fellow colleagues. So I'm going to just hold that last thought for a moment, because all those achievements that I mentioned that I will be fact checking, where does that drive and inspiration come from for you to conduct yourself the way that you do? You mentioned role models, and you're thought of as a role model now. So where does it come from for you to act in the way that you do?
It's just about doing the right thing. My role models were my parents. You know, I never had to look further than the dinner table for a role model. You know, my parents came to the UK. They were first generation Windrush migrants. They worked hard. You know, they lived in the old Highfields at the time. They shared a house with 4 other people. They had 1 room, so you had literally a blanket across the room on a piece of rope. So one half of that was your living room, and one half of that was your bedroom. Right. That's how they existed, you know. And you know, we grew up on a council estate in the Northfields, you know, and my dad he used to literally work his heart out. You know, he would go to work, 12-hour days he'd do, constant 12-hour days. We'd go on holiday without him. You know, it's that kind of work ethic. And my mum was the same. You know, to make ends meet, she was a seamstress, she'd make clothes, she'd make wedding cakes. You know, it was just that work ethic. And I suppose it was just how you were brought up, just to do the right thing. And that's how That's how I am. It's all about doing the right thing, setting an example, leading from the front. And I know that, you know, it's quite difficult sometimes in the organisation, because a lot of the times people don't like that. You know, people don't like you being that trailblazer. They don't like you being that person that people look up to, because sometimes it singles you out as a bit of a, not a show off, but just somebody that stands out. And sometimes that was difficult to deal with. You just got to be yourself, you know, and that's what I say to anybody. So, you know, people, I had the question asked this week, what would you tell your younger self who joined 30 years ago? And I'd say, just be yourself, because that's what I always did. You know, right. I'm still that Leicester Panthers player. I still walk with a bit of a swagger. That's because I've got a limp. You know, that's all the years of running on hard turf. You know, but I'm just me. And I'm Mel Thomas, and I'll never change. And you know, the Panthers players will tell you, you know, when I joined the organisation, there was a lot of apprehension. But as we went through the years together, it was just, Mel's just Mel, and that's it. And we just carry on, and that was it.
Brilliant. I love it. When you mentioned about your parents coming over from Windrush, Antigua, I imagine that the times, like you said, with the one bedroom room when your parents arrived, one bedroom place. So what was it like growing up for you? I know you mentioned Highfields and then Northfields. I know those areas in Leicester, but did you ever think that you'd be a police officer?
Yeah, no, but I was actually, someone asked me, what when you were small, what did you actually want to be? My mum will tell you, I wanted to be a doctor. Okay. But I just wasn't clever enough. You know, I think as much as you want to aspire, it's the old reach for the stars. If you hit the clouds, you've achieved something. I knew I just academically was not clever enough to be a doctor. So I suppose I reached for the stars and hit them, but I hit the clouds. I became a police officer. You know, so I still achieved something, you know, within my career. It was just something that came along. I was always PT, always into sport, played a lot of sport. And it was my friend's aunt who said, you'd make a really good police officer. And I was like, oh, you think so? Yeah, you'd make a really good police officer. So I applied the first time. And at the time, I was playing for the Huntsmen at the time. Didn't get in the first time, and I was absolutely distraught. So then I applied the second time, and it was only by chance, because when I didn't get in, I joined the post office, became a postman, and I was delivering the mail. And I walked into the recruitment office on Blackbird Road, and my form was sat on a pile of forms that was due to be incinerated. And they said, you're Mel Thomas, aren't you? I said, yeah. They went, it's your form. I went, oh, yeah, so it is. They said, why don't you apply again? And I said, no. I was that disappointed when I didn't get in the first time. I said, give it one more go, see how you go. And you know, the rest is history, really. You know, I absolutely love the job. It was a brilliant job. Would I do it again? Absolutely, in a heartbeat. I'd do it all again. It was just such a fulfilling, rewarding job. You know, you talk about the money that I've raised for charity. I've done that through the organisation. You know, if you see an opportunity, you know, use it to your advantage. And being a police officer, I was able to open doors as such and use that as an advantage to do stuff. So doing the knife crime video with Anthony Joshua 10 days after he'd won the world title, that was because I was, you know, in the organisation. You know, getting signatures from people like Michael Owen, Emil Heskey, you know, Jan Molby, if anyone remembers Jan Molby, wow. You know, all these, exactly, you know, meeting Jan Molby when the Champions League was on, because I think it was the Copenhagen game he came over for with the television company. All these kind of things gave me the opportunity to do stuff like that. So why not use them? Why not do them? You know, so it was just brilliant. Being a cop was probably the best thing that happened to me career-wise, because it allowed me to make a change. And I honestly do feel that I made a change. You know, I've seen people join the organisation after me, and they still come up to me and say, I wouldn't be a police officer if it wasn't for you. So yeah, it's about taking those advantages and using it.
Excellent. Thank you. One of my guests that I've had a chat with is Dwayne Veritas Logan, and I had a great chat with him. I think it was a great chat. I enjoyed it, about the short film that he wrote and directed and acted in called Black Thought. And I was intrigued to talk to him because I wanted to learn more about the racial divide, the racial injustice, particularly in this country and particularly over the last couple of years. So I said to Dwayne, I understand that I am a white male in the USA, and therefore I'm automatically privileged. And he had a different thought about that. But ultimately, I feel that the way that that is looked at, it's wrong. Obviously, it's imbalanced. So in recent years, particularly in the USA, the police have been exposed for their treatment of black men, like Trayvon Martin and George Floyd, with those incidents, of course, as you know. But how do you deal with, or how do you digest those situations? And what do you think when racial injustice is so obviously at the forefront of problems? And I've got an understanding, a very light understanding of what it's like in the UK because I live here now. But what do you think?
My view of it is, I mean, you know, starting with the George Floyd situation, I think it was such a sad event. When I actually saw it, I couldn't believe. I actually thought it was staged. I had to watch it again and again, and then had to search for it on the net to believe that a police officer could do that to an individual was just beyond me, absolutely beyond me. Regardless of whatever people feel about George Floyd, the individual, the event, the actual what happened to George Floyd, I feel has been world-changing, absolutely world-changing, because it's opened people's eyes to the injustices that black people do face, and they do. My partner's white, and she's seen the injustices that people face, and she's, you know, she never saw them before. It's her actually being present, actually seeing them, that makes her aware of things that she now goes, oh, I never saw it like that. I never thought of it like that. There was the incident where the serviceman was stopped in his car and had a gun aimed at him, and then he was pistol whipped. You know, even that situation. And my partner said, "Well, why didn't he just get out of the car when the police officer said this? Because if he would have put his hands down, he would have been shot." And she just went, "Oh." I said, because whilst you would have just reached down and opened the door, that police officer would have shot him and said he was reaching for a weapon. And it's those kind of things where you have to say, how could a serviceman in uniform be treated in that way? There's something not inherently right with that situation. And you've got to say that police officer obviously saw colour before he saw the uniform. He obviously wasn't listening to a word that the individual was saying. He just saw colour. And you've got to say that that's exactly what happened with the George Floyd situation. Because if you've got somebody, and, you know, we know that there's been this picture or story portrayed of George Floyd and his past and everything else. That's one thing. But what you have got is an individual who is drug dependent, who is handcuffed, who is not struggling, and is claustrophobic. So when you're trying to put him in the back of a car and he doesn't want to go in the car, well, it's really simple. Get a van. It's just simple. The car, sit on the bonnet. You ain't going to be able to run away because you're handcuffed. We'll wait for a bigger vehicle. Instead, you've done what you've, and there's only one explanation for that, and that is just pure out and out racism. And I think that was played out in the court trial and everything else, and the fact that his own force disowned him. They cut him loose. The experts cut him loose, and the police officer was sentenced in the way he was. What you can't ignore, bring it back home, is incidents that have happened in the UK. Most recently, Damian Atkinson. Dane Atkinson case is a horrific case where you've got to say that, for me personally, I personally feel that that was born purely out of racism. That officer acted in a racist manner. You cannot excuse, and I am still technically still a taser instructor. So when you taser somebody, you shout a warning. If the person doesn't listen to that warning, you then either what's called a sparking drill. So you put the taser up in the air, you spark it, and you show them what the taser will do. This is taser. It emits 60,000 volts. This is what it looks like, and this is what it sounds like. If you haven't got time to do that, fine. You deploy the taser. Pop, taser. And that's what you're supposed to do. You then wait and you reassess. So when you let off that taser, it goes for 5 seconds and it stops. The only way you can make the taser go longer is by overriding the taser. So you press the override button. That's what that officer did. He held the override button for 33 seconds. How can you justify that? You just can't justify it. And then step forward, kick him to the head, and then his colleague then back and strikes him 3 times on the thing you can give for the fact that you've baited them, and then you step forward and kick them in the head, kicking them so hard you've left lace marks in their head. So
oh my goodness,
you've got to say, for me, that that was born out of racism. I also go further than that and say that even the officer's sentence was born out of racism, because he lied in the trial. He was only given 8 years, and he was given the minimum, and the judge said it's the starting point, 8 years. So you then have to say, when you talk about Black Lives Matter, because if that was a white man who'd been killed, would it have been 8 years? And I would argue no.
No. So the thing is, I get that it's saying that's racism, and you said about the guy in the US, he saw colour first. But what? So what? That's my point. So what of the colour? Why have we got this thing where colour gets in our way? I'm saying gets in people's way, and it changes the way that they're thinking. What difference does it make? This fly is
I suppose the difference it makes. The difference it makes when you hold any prejudices, it affects the way that you react and you perform. So let's say, for instance, you have an aversion to someone who's gay. Dealing with a gay person, your performance will be completely different because you have that bias. You hold that bias. You know, same thing with men who deal with women. You know, women complainants, women suspects, female suspects. It affects their behavior. It affects the way that they perform. This is where your morals come out. This is where your values come out. I can honestly say that every person I've dealt with in 30 years of policing, I challenge anyone to come to me and say, you dealt with me differently because of my gender. You dealt with me differently because of my sexual orientation. You dealt with me differently because of my ethnicity. Everyone got dealt with the same.
Yeah.
Some people might say that's wrong because that means that I didn't adapt the way that I dealt with them to accommodate their gender, their sexual orientation, their ethnicity. You know what? I'll take that feedback. But what I can honestly say is that I did not deal with them differently because of any of their protected characteristics. And that's the key for me, you know, and that's why I feel that these things happen, because whilst people may feel that they don't hold those prejudices, it comes out when people are under stress. It comes out. You can't stop it. It bleeds out. You cannot stop it. You know?
But that goes...
I would go further and say, go to a football match. football supporters are the most passionate people. When something happens, what do football fans do in the main?
We know it. We saw it in the Euros.
We know what they do. And I would challenge you that now you're living in the States, when Tampa Bay are not doing well, when the Jets aren't doing well, when the Giants aren't doing well, you don't hear racist comments being shouted. You hear either get rid of the coach or get the second string on or whatever it is. But it's never racist, it's never homophobic, and this is just it. And that's the difference.
Wow. Okay, interesting. The thing is, though, I keep thinking that it needs to go deeper to an education point of view, because ultimately what's the difference? And I'm pretty simple, I don't know, but what difference does it make? There's no difference. I remember when people were talking here about a couple of years ago about having a bathroom where you could have mixed genders going in. I don't want to see, someone was saying to me, I don't want to see what someone's got when they're in the urinal next to me. Well, why would you be looking? Why does it matter?
Exactly, absolutely. In Europe, you have mixed gender toilets where the females all use the toilet, the males use the urinal. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter at all. And you're right, it does go down further into education, because you were schooled in the UK. So if your schooling was the same as mine, England won the Second World War, didn't they? Great Britain won the Second World War. Nobody else won the Second World War. I think the Americans came in 1944 when they dropped the bomb, and that was about it. They didn't tell us about Australia. They didn't tell us about the soldiers from India. They didn't tell us about soldiers from the Caribbean. They didn't tell us about all these other people that basically played massive parts in winning the war. And that's just it. It all starts from the beginning, from education. And even my 15-year-old daughter basically dropped history. And I said, well, why? She says, because they don't teach me my history. Why don't they teach me my history? Why don't they teach black history? They don't teach any black history, and that's it. And this is a child who's going through school now. So it's not changed from when we were at school 30 years ago, Yeah,
don't remind me.
Doesn't it? Longer for me.
Yeah, it's just sad, and it feels like it's such a, I think of it like a golf ball. If you cut that golf ball in half, you see all that entangled rubber bands, elastic bands. You've got to start digging into that to unravel them and get to the core of it, I guess. I mentioned Dwayne, my previous guest, and when I kind of tried to talk to him about this and learn about the subject, which I believe is extremely important, he said there's only so much that the black community can do until they need to lean on, and I love the way he phrased this, white brothers and sisters to obtain support. What do you think about that? Because that really hit me. That was a great thing that stuck with me.
So the police service, let's say, for instance, Leicestershire Police. Let's say, for instance, that Leicestershire Police, on a whole, from ethnic backgrounds, let's say they've got 8% that are from ethnic backgrounds. So if that 8% want to progress, where's the support going to come from? Because whilst we can support ourselves, the support has to come from the other 92%, or some of that 92%, to help those individuals progress. So it's no different in any big organisation, in any community, in any country, because it's got to be done by everybody. And I think you mentioned the Euros. I think the Euros was a massive example of that. The behaviours of individuals, the things that were posted on social media, and then this outpouring of, hold on a minute, you're not speaking for us. You know? You're not talking for us. You're not talking for us as white individuals. You are not talking for us. And that's where that support comes from. It has to be a unilateral approach of, we're not happy with this. Even when you saw Black Lives Matter, and that was the big thing for me with Black Lives Matter, it wasn't just black people that were marching. It was a multitude of all backgrounds that were saying, you know what, this is not right. It's not right. Regardless of whatever your feelings are, regardless of, okay, so you've got Black Lives Matter, the movement who wants to defund the police and everything else, but actually you've got Black Lives Matter UK and other establishments who don't want to defund the police. They want to work with the police. They want to work with the health service. They want to work with the court system. They want to work with all these organisations where, and it has been documented, have been institutionally racist or are still institutionally racist. It's about, how do we bring about that change? We've got to bring about change at some point, because if we don't, then there goes another generation that are going to have to live through that, and another generation. Somewhere there has to be that change. We've got to evoke that change.
And ultimately, isn't there a requirement to see that bigger picture? Because if we are not unilaterally, I nearly couldn't say that, unilaterally together, we all get affected anyway. It's like the pandemic and wearing a mask. This is probably going a bit too far off topic, but my view is the sooner we wear masks and get vaccinated, the quicker we'll be out of this mess, and the quicker we can get back to some kind of normal life again. Is that not a similar thought pattern to the sooner we get and address this and realise the craziness of what's going on, the quicker we can all enjoy stuff and, I don't know, live in harmony? I guess I'm getting a bit kind of cheesy now, but
No, it's a perfect analogy. The sooner people get a grip and actually realise that this behaviour is wrong, they're using the P word to describe people from Pakistan, using the N word, all these kind of things, thinking that because I walk into a football ground and I support a team, that I can use racist, homophobic language for 90 minutes. What? Because I'm watching football? No, it's not acceptable. It's just not acceptable. And these kids that are stood next to you then think it's acceptable as well. And then they go and play it out as well. So until people actually realise, this is not acceptable, it won't change. You won't evoke that change.
Now, I've got one thing that might be a tricky thing to ask you, but you just mentioned it, so I'm going to take it on from there. So you mentioned the N word, which is, I hate it, it's awful. What are your thoughts, though, when black people use that word? Because in some ways, I think, well, how is it deemed, or how can you communicate that it shouldn't be said, but then it looks like black people are okay to say it?
My own thoughts are, I just think it's a completely unacceptable word. I know that black people and the guys who I've played football with over the years from the States, and I played basketball with over the years, they used to bounce it around, sort of calling each other by that name as well. And it's not a term I'm comfortable with. It's not a term that I would use. It's not a term that I'd want my children to use. I just don't feel that it's appropriate at all. Absolutely not. Absolutely inappropriate. It's not appropriate. Not appropriate.
Okay. Well, we've done the serious stuff, and it was really deep, and I like that, and I enjoyed it. So thank you for sharing your insights with that. And I hope that I can keep watching you and learning from what you're doing, to hopefully we'll get to that platform of change. So to lighten the mood a little bit, for every guest that I am fortunate to chat with, I've got some questions that I ask them. So I'm going to ask these one by one to yourself, put you on the spot and see what your answers are. So the first one is, what frustrates you? And we may have already kind of talked to this in a few different variations, but what frustrates you?
Difficult people. When I think you mentioned it earlier, wearing masks. If you wear a mask, it reduces the chance of getting COVID. If we proved now over here, certainly, that if you have the vaccination, it reduces your chance of getting COVID and potentially you spreading COVID. So why be difficult about it? You know, certainly through the pandemic for the last 12 months, we've seen people that have been really difficult about it. You know, I'm in a shop, I'm wearing a mask. You've got people arguing why they can't get served because they're not wearing a mask. It says over the door, you need to wear a mask. It's those kind of things. I just find dealing with difficult people is really annoying. And it's one thing I don't miss about being a police officer is when you deal with that person who you just said, look, just go home. 10 minutes later, they're still there down the road and they're still causing a problem. Now I've warned you, go home. You walk around the corner, they're still there and they're causing more problems. You end up nicking them, you write your night off. Why? Because that's to nick somebody who 30 minutes ago asked to go home. And it's that kind of thing. Difficult people. That's my frustration.
And I think it's pretty obvious for everyone watching that if someone is going to say no to you, then they're going to be in trouble. I've seen the size of you. You're absolutely massive. All right, what warms your heart and makes you smile?
My kids. I have to say, I've got the best 4 kids any father could ask for. I was talking to a colleague yesterday, actually, at work, and we were saying about kids' behaviour and everything else, and she's clashing with her daughter, and I think that's just a mum and daughter thing. But I said, I can honestly say, you know, I've never had those kind of problems with the kids. They're just adorable. They're just brilliant. You know, I had 3 girls to start with, then I got a boy. Wow, what a hit that was, because boys compared to girls are just, it's like starting from ground zero. You know, they fall over, they can't put one foot in front of the other without hurting themselves. They're just completely different. They can't sit still. But, you know, I've got the best kids ever, and it's my kids. You know, and I'm not one of these people who lives my life through my kids. My kids are their own people. They're their own spirits. You know, if they like sport, they like sport. If they don't like sport, they don't like sport. You know, none of them have gone on to do the things that I've done in sport, but they've been themselves, and that's what I enjoy about them. That they are very clever, intelligent individuals. My daughter in Australia, she now runs her own company, entertainment company. You know, and her husband runs his own electrics company. My second daughter, she's graduated from Newcastle University with a law degree, and now she's off to London. You know, and my daughter's ready to sit her GCSE. So it's just brilliant. They just warm my heart all the time. So yeah, my kids.
Fantastic. Thank you. What are your home improvement skills like?
Rubbish. We're due to have the house decorated, actually, and I won't be doing any of it because I'm just awful at cutting lines. It's just, you know what? The worst thing I could do is paint this house, because I would sit there and go, that's not very good. That's not very good. I've missed a bit there. So we're just going to get a decorator in. So yeah, I'm not very good. I can knock things down. I'm good at that. I can knock things down. I can use nails and screws and drills and stuff like that. But other than that, that's it. That is my limit. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, at least you know, because that's half the battle, knowing that you're not very good at something. So, last question of this part then is: if you could be a superhero, what would your special power be, and what would be your mode of transport?
I suppose immortality.
Ooh.
And I think flight would be my mode of transport, because I'm fascinated with flying. I could sit here, and where we live, I think we're in the flight path of a lot of planes that take off from East Midlands Airport. And I used to sit on the armed response vehicle when we used to do the patrols back in the 90s at the airport and just watch planes take off. I'm just fascinated by flight. Absolutely fascinated. I sit looking out the window when the plane takes off. You get a lot of people that sit there gripping the seats and everything else, and I'm there because I just think it's amazing. I think just the concept of flight itself, whether it's a helicopter taking off, whether it's a plane taking off, whatever it is, I just find it absolutely fascinating.
Brilliant. Well, I hope that you're going to design some kind of superhero outfit, and we all look forward to seeing that. All right. Well, what's next for you then? Because I know that fitness is still playing a big part in your life. What's next for you?
Well, I still go out to Lanzarote doing fitness camps. So I do that every year at Club La Santa. So that's where they run the Ironman out of. We still go to Denmark. So we've got bodywork. So we go out to Denmark every year and we do our fitness camp out there. So we're due to go out on the 18th of March next year, which is we're really looking forward to, because obviously we missed it because of COVID last year. And I'm still doing my community classes in Leicester. So I'm still in Leicester. Well, I'm still in Leicestershire on the Leicestershire-Derbyshire border. So I'm still doing my classes, and we'll still do bodywork staying in Leicester. So I've gone back to Leicestershire Police as a positive action officer. So I assist with recruitment and retention of applicants, particularly from underrepresented groups. So recently we had a detective constable's process. So now you have different entries into the police service. You can join without a degree and work towards a degree. So that's a police constable's degree applicant. You can apply with a degree, so you're a degree holder applicant, and you can also apply to be a detective constable direct entrant with a degree. So okay. They're the three modes. They're the three ways you can join now. You can't join. There's no sort of butcher, baker, candlestick maker like when I joined without a qualification. You have to work towards a degree now. So we had a detective constable's process. We had 20 applicants come through myself that were assisted to get into the organisation, and 19 passed. So I'm pretty happy with that. All from underrepresented groups. So it's great to see that now. When you see that photo of people joining the organisation, you'll see it in November when it comes out. I will be particularly proud, because you will see a lot of people of colour on there, and that's what we need. We need more people of colour joining the organisation to teach the organisation how to protect and serve our communities, because we can't expect the organisation to know how to police the Asian community if we don't have a number of Asian people in the community. The same with the Black community, the same with the Somalian community, and actually the same with the traveller community as well, because we don't understand the traveller community. Yeah. Unfortunately, we have a situation where it's very hard to engage with certain communities, but we've got to reach out so we can understand those communities to say, what do you need from the police? We have Romani officers, or officers that are descendants of Romani travellers in the organisation, and they're reaching out to the traveller community to say, look, this is where I originated from. So slowly but surely we are getting there. Great. It will take time, and it will always take time. Yeah. But that is what I'm doing now. That is my aim now, to reach out to more communities. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing all your insights into your world today. I know that you're a busy man, so I really appreciate the time, and it's great to chat with you after 14 years. Very scary. So I hope to be visiting England in December, so I hope that we have a chance to meet up in person, and that'd be really cool, COVID permitting, of course. So it's been brilliant. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you for your time. Thank you for wearing the jersey and allow me to show those photos and seeing the helmet. I wish you all the best with whatever you do and what you're doing in the future, and I'll keep in touch. Thank you. No, and when you come over in December, if you want to come to headquarters, have a bit of a walk around, come and have a look at the arm response and stuff like that. And no worries. You can come down if you want to do another interview again, and if you want to do it live from, while some training's going on in the background, you're more than welcome to do that. Do I have to join in the training? I'll see what I can sort out. Okay, wonderful. Mel, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. I wish you well for the future endeavours that you've got coming up, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Take care. Stay safe.
Take care, Mel, and you. See you.